Happy New Year. Happy 2022, everyone. This is JJ Flazanes, your producer and empowerment strategist. Welcome to the show. Thank you for downloading this episode. Today, we're going to talk about whole brain living with Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. I decided to publish this episode first in 2022 because I wanted to create a theme for 2022 for everybody in healing. A theme for healing, a theme for balance, a theme for awareness, a theme for compassion. And you'll hear us talk a lot about using her work on me and looking at my different characters that she lays out in her book. And so it's a very high energy conversation. If you enjoyed the last one, this one is even more because now we've got a relationship. I'm even more excited about the work. And we're just having a really good time. So it is a very high energy show. Now, in the episode, I do integrate other tools that I use, one of which being astrology. So if you don't know already, we are starting a 4-week next level astrology class, Stephanie Shea and I, next week. Wednesday, January 12th, and this will be the only time that we do this course live. So if you have any desire, even if you haven't taken the first astrology class, you can absolutely join this one. We're going to talk about outer planets versus inner planets, and the most important part of this is that you're going to get me and Stephanie at a live Q&A every week. You could also submit questions if you can't make one of the live classes, but you'll get us to actually personally give you your advice based on your chart, based on your relationships, based on the work that I'm talking about today. I'd even say that if you join the course and you want to even talk a little bit about whole brain living today in the astrology course and how they connect, we can absolutely do that also. So if you're interested in joining our one-time live astrology class, Next Level, go to jjflazanes.com/next level. One time, it's going to be live. It will be available later in the future when it's finished, and you can do it as a home study course, but it won't be live, and there won't be an opportunity to ask any personalized questions about your chart, anybody else's chart, or how it integrates into your life. So again, jjflazanes.com/next level, and it starts on January 12th. It's 4 Wednesdays. And we might add a 5th. We'll see how it goes with overload. But I'd love to see you there if it's of interest to you. So today we're talking all about whole brain living with Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. And just to remind you of who she is, Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor is a Harvard-trained and published neuroscientist. In 1996, she experienced a severe hemorrhage in the left hemisphere of her brain, causing her to lose the ability to walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of her life. Her memoir, My Stroke of Insight, documenting her experience with stroke and 8-year recovery, spent 63 weeks on the New York Times nonfiction bestseller list and is still routinely the #1 book in the category of stroke in the Amazon marketplace. We did a show called My Stroke of Insight here on the podcast, maybe not even a month ago. So if you haven't heard that, I would recommend that you revisit that after today. You don't need to in order to listen and get something out of today. But this is going to be again, very high energy conversation. Hopefully you can see yourself in it. And for those of you who've been following me for a while, you'll be able to pick apart and know based on what we talk about, how that may or may not apply to you and how you may start thinking about the different characters of your brain and which one dominates your life and which ones you might need to strengthen and reconnect with in order to be more successful and happier always. So again, can't wait for you to have the show. It's also on YouTube. If you want to see us, that might be better because we do a lot of laughing and I'm very animated and we just have a really good time. And that's jjflazanes.tv. And one more plug for the astrology course. Would love to see you there live on January 12th. jjflazanes.com/next level. Enjoy today's show and Happy New Year. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm very excited. I just want to say if you're finding this on YouTube and you've searched out Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor and you don't know me, you may not like me because I'm going to talk and I'm probably going to talk a lot. So if you don't want me and you want more of her, where can they find you and get more of just you?
drjilltaylor.com.
Okay. So that's where you go if you just want her. And if you're along for the ride, this is cool. Now, if you're on the podcast and you know we're doing a video, come to jjflazames.tv so you can see us have a really good time. Oh, and by the way, if you're finding us on YouTube, this is also a podcast. So click below, the link below, right under the description will take you straight to the audio file where you can take us with you as you walk or play or cook or shop or drive or exercise. So she's back. Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor is back with Whole Brain Living, which is what she was chomping at the bit to want to talk about the last one, because I had to take her back, a decade to go talk about the other book, not because I'm late to the party, but because that's the evolution of me. So now we're getting deep into the woods here, really deep with Whole Brain Living. And I'll be honest with everybody, I'm only halfway through the book as of this moment, but here's the thing I'm going to say about that. I released the need to have it finished because it's so chock full of great information that I want to not only retain, but utilize. And so today's conversation, if I get through this book, I'm going to have a conversation with you that people aren't going to be able to track because they haven't read the book. So my first recommendation, of course, is everybody get the book. And I would recommend, just because of the density of it, not that it's a thick book. I mean, I have a pen in it right now, but get the audiobook. I have both. I've been listening. And thank you for reading it. I've been listening. I was listening and following along. I was like, and then I have it as I'm flipping through it. But honestly, get both, but at least just get the audiobook, because those of you listening to me on the podcast, you like audio. So listen to her on the podcast. So welcome back to the show.
I am so excited to be here. We had such a good time last time, and it's nice to be up to date now. Whole Brain Living. I'm so excited to dig into your brain.
And I'm excited for you to dig into my brain. In fact, if you're willing, I'd love for you to do a little diagnosis. If you don't know me that well, but I'd love to hear what you think the percentages I am of character 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Me or your listeners?
No, me. I want you to.
Me?
Would you be willing to say, here's what I think you are?
Well, let's talk about it. Shall we talk about it?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. So that you can introduce the parts of you to me that I don't see. So I see a lot of strong character 1 because you're clearly organized. You're clearly punctual. You clearly care about getting it done. You have the schedule. You got the plan. You got the recipe. You got the structure. You got the look. You got all that. So that's very strong character 1. You have to be able to have a strong character 1 to be you and do the kinds of things that you do. I'm also guessing that you have, because you have a strong 1, I'm guessing you know your own character 2. And although I and your audience probably would not be introduced to your little unhappy, discontent, discombobulated self, your relationships would. Yes.
There is a character 2. We all have one.
Exactly.
And, when you go through this book, you want us, and I kept saying in the beginning, well, what's it called? What's it called? And you're like, oh no, I want you to name it.
I want you to name it.
Well, but I don't, because why my default was to name it somebody I don't like, or somebody that I think is out of balance. And I do not want to associate myself with, like, your names are awesome because you made them mean. And so it takes a lot of, now that I've gone through it, and I've explained this to other people since reading your book, I'm like, well, her character 1 is called Helen, and here's why. But it's so concise, and I'm literally wrapping my brain around what feels right for me, and I haven't found that yet. So I love your names, and I think it's a good default. I mean, mine is character 4. I can come up with a character 4 for me that's different than yours, and your character 3, I can also. But your 1 and 2, I'm like, oh, I like those. Those are good.
Yeah.
I have a character 2. I would say that part of the work that I do in the world. And so for those of you that are listening and have, you're not up to speed yet, I would guess that by what was just taught to you, that left brain character 1, the thinking brain, is all those structural, linear, leadership, thinking, organization. That's the part of your left brain character 1, which is your thinking part of your left brain. And then we move to character 2, which is the feeling part of your left brain. And that is more of the kind of always in fear or always in survival mode part of you. You call her Abby because of being abandoned, which we all have. We all have forms of PTSD all over the map. But, I know so many people that live in their character 2. We all have it. And for me, the character 2 is like, okay, here's what the stuff we need to heal is. But there are so many people that are attached to the
Right.
identity of their character 2.
Right.
They've never experienced 4. They don't
Right.
allow themselves 3. They
Right.
live in the 1 and the 2, and not even in the 1. They live in the 2, and it's always a survival mode. And
Right.
so while I know I have it,
Yeah.
Dr. Terry Real was on. We just interviewed the other day. I don't know when these are going to publish, but he was giving an example, and I had just been triggered by my mother, like a situation, and which by the way, it's a sadness trigger. It's not an anger. I've never had like anger. It's a frustration, and he was giving examples, and I said, "Hey, can we just use me?" And so I just basically had a therapy session on air, and and he was breaking me, and I was like, I get it, and trust me, I go, if this was a real therapy session, I would have been bawling my eyes out, hysterically, ugly crying 20 minutes ago. I said, but I am trying to hold it together for my show. So I did cry, as I do on my show, and no one is immune to JJ having tears and sniffling and being like, okay, but to stay focused. So I do have a character 2, and I saw her on Monday. But I don't think she comes out that much, because my whole life purpose is healing and doing that kind of healing work on people.
Right. And healing is something that happens in the present moment. And 99% of our pain is actually in our past, or it's in our fear of the future. And so the biggest differences between the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, period, is that in the left hemisphere, I have a past and I have a future, and I have a me, the individual. So me, my past and my future, my pain from the past, my fear of the future, that's and all related through the filter of me, Jill Bolte Taylor. So I have thinking in my past and in my future. I have emotion in my past and in my future. And I also, in that character 2, have my craving tissue. So any addiction that we may have, that craving happens in that character 2 tissue. And one of the things that you just said that was absolutely right and beautiful is that, we don't want to live there. There are people who live in their character 2. And the beauty of the character 2 is that the character 2 shows us where our pain is, which is something that needs to be healed. And so the only way to not just live, always be fabulous and always be perfect, well, there's no growth in the fabulous and the perfect, because you've achieved the fabulous and the perfect. You have to dig into the part of us that isn't resonating with reality. And that's generally what brings us pain. I don't want this to look like this. I don't want this to be that. I don't want this outcome. I don't want it to rain outside. Give me a reason to push it away. Or I'm pushing it away because something in my past looked like danger, and now this also looks like danger. So more alarm, alarm, alert, alert. So we all have this part of ourselves, and it's our extreme vulnerability. And I think the real key is, how do we each as individuals figure out how to self-soothe that part of ourselves? And I think when it comes to healing, then it's a matter of, we have to come into the consciousness of the right brain, into the present moment, where it's not just all about me, the individual, but I'm not about the past, and I'm not in the future. I'm in the present moment. And my present moment consciousnesses then can reach into the pain of my past and say, oh my gosh, but that's not now. And so how do we grow from that? How do we prevent that from happening again? How do we manage something that looks like that the next time we see it coming toward us? How do we bring our own emotional triggers down so that mom doesn't have the power to just pounce on it, like nobody's got the power, like, the biological family, in how to trigger our triggers? And so health, to me, the healing and the healthiness is really the consciousness of the right here, right now, present moment. And in the present moment, I am accepting of all that is, whatever it is.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that the setup that you just gave in terms of, what does that healing mean? And I know, as I'm going through the second half of the book, and the breathe and the assess and having those tools, and doing other tools, EMDR, EFT, visualization, rampage appreciation and gratitude, looking at those things. And, I had a client early this week, and this is where I'm going to have a really good time with this work and with astrology. I am not a certified astrologer. However, I'm teaching an astrology class tonight with the head astrologer from the Jan Stiller Company, who has deemed me my own kind of astrologer, because I'm that kind of geek about it. And when I look at like patterns, looking at the pattern of somebody that I worked with this week who's a lot of earth in them, right? And earth generally is very grounded, also very stable, but because they're very stable, they're not very flexible and not very moving and they don't go anywhere. And this person is literally living in their character too. And I remember, but she's sitting in this place. And when I asked her, okay, so what's the trigger with the boss that you hate? And the boss, well, he thinks I'm stupid. And I said, okay, well, usually it's a mirror for ourselves. So do you think you're stupid? And then she burst into tears and said, no. And then she said, well, sometimes. Oh. And so after that sort of emotion got released, I said, okay, so what do you know that you're good at? And then she rambled off like 10 things that she was good at. I said, great. Are you doing this at your work? And she said, none of them. I said, great. So now there's no confusion. You're addicted to the confusion. Your character 2 is addicted to the drama and confusion. There's something that you don't know. No, now you know it. Are we in agreement now that you understand that what you're good at, what you know you're good at, you are not living?
Right.
And this situation is never going to change. Even if you change who you are in it, you're still not using the strengths that you have. But I looked at the character 2, and she's also a whole bunch of Taurus and Virgo. And so Taurus and Virgo are normally very stubborn to change because that whole stability, I'm not taking risk thing. So how do you take somebody, and we're not done with my 3 and 4, but how do we take somebody who lives in their character 2, who isn't convinced because they haven't had experience? Right. One more quick story I want to tell you, because I told this client this story. It was when I said, there's no confusion right now, correct? You're clear. So anytime you want to sink back into this idea that you get overwhelmed with emotion about there's no confusion. All you need to do now is action to get out of there, to figure out a solution at this point. Back in 2004, it wasn't a Tony Robbins event, but it was kind of like a Tony Robbins event, but it was about like warrior training. And we went through a lot of really hard, emotionally and physically hard things for 5 days. And at the end of this 5-day process, the group of us were in 2 different circles, an inside circle and an outside circle. And it was then that I had this clarity and epiphany. And I am highly intuitive, and I have lived in my 3 and 4 for a lot part of my life, especially when I learned about law of attraction. Absolutely. But I was in the circle, and we had, and they wear you down by the end of the week, and, there's music playing, and they want you to cry, everybody to break down and cry and have this emotional release. And that's cool. It's fine. But I'm going around the circle, and remember, I don't know any of these people except for these 5 days. And we bonded over all this stuff that we did. But I remember looking in someone's eyes, and I remember noticing and being aware in that present moment that if I was to be in the present moment, there's nothing wrong. But I recognized that most people were looking at me crying about something in the past, or that I had the opportunity to click into by the music, by the sentiment. In that moment, I'm being reminded of something, or I'm being afraid of something. And that's where the emotion's coming from. It's not coming from being here and now. Yeah. And when I could breathe into and make that choice in that second to go, oh, if I'm actually looking at you, person I don't know, who I have no history with, and I have nothing, there's nothing wrong. So why would I be sitting there crying? Right. Because I'm thinking about something in the past. Right. So this left brain character 2, right, that's emoting about something in the past is highly addicting to many people, and they get stuck in it. So besides the awareness that's being created by understanding the 4 parts, how do we move somebody out of character 2 or how would you move somebody out of character 2 to say, and again, awareness for some of them, because some of them are so afraid, they're addicted to their fear and they don't want to move. So even if you say to them, do you want to change? They'll say yes, but then they don't want to do the work for whatever reason. How do you move somebody out of that?
Right. And that was a beautiful example. And right now it's even worse because of our societal norm. And the societal norm says it is acceptable for us to be projecting all of our fears of our character 2s out into the world because we're right below anxiety. And because we've been in this pandemic for so long now, even if we're not in the rage or the fear or the sadness or the anxiety of our character 2, we're right below it. it. So it takes nothing for us to trigger each other. So right now we really are in a pandemic of character 2. So you've got to know what your choices are. If you say to me, Jill, don't be in your character 2, I look at you and I say, well, JJ, what are my choices? What are my options? And that's why I love this material, because if I know these 4 characters very well inside of me, and I really have done the work and I feel what it feels like, I know when I'm in my character 2, I know when I'm in my character 1. She holds my body different. I speak differently. I'm generally in my office and working. Where's my character 3? My character 3 starts bouncing. My voice goes up. I get very excited. I'm in my art space, or I'm out playing in the woods or wherever. I mean, this is her, she's arrived. And then my character 4, she's calm and she's enormous and big as the universe. And she's simply loving and open and available. And, she's just this wonderful part of me that accepts whatever is. I'm this amazing life form. I did nothing to deserve this or earn this form of life. And now I'm here, and then boom, I'll be gone. And wow, what a wondrous experience that I exist at all. And so I can sink deeply into each of these 4 parts of me. So if I feel, and I can tell as soon as character 2 starts coming online, I feel the trigger, I feel the anxiety, I feel the furrow in my brow, I feel the jaw start to clamp, I feel my chest get narrow, I really feel in my body my character 2. As soon as I feel that trigger, I recognize that for 90 seconds from the moment I trigger that trigger, I think the thought, it triggers the emotion, I run a physiological response, it floods through me, it flushes out of me, and then it's over. Now I can rethink the thought and rerun that circuit again, or not, but I have to know. So what I do for people who are so really turning their character 4, I always say visit there, but don't make it a lifestyle. If you make it a lifestyle, then you're going to notice that the people around you are going to be either pushing away from you, or they're going to be coming in as misery loves miserable company. And then we're just all worrying, or we're all feeling whatever it is negative that we're feeling. So simply becoming aware of what am I feeling, which of these 4 characters am I in, and then it's the last step is what I call the brain huddle. Once we know the 4 characters, any of the 4 characters can call a brain huddle. And I encourage each of our characters to practice literally 20, 30 times a day. My character 1, she's structured and she's organized. She actually puts on the list of her to-do, call a huddle. When I get there, it's like, okay, Helen's going to call a huddle. That's what I call my character 1. Helen, she's hell on wheels. She gets it done. So it's like a huddle. And the huddle is just like any team that calls a huddle. My brain team are these 4 characters. And when they're all in the present moment, thinking and relating to one another, then I can make the best decision for me about what am I going to do next, because I have my best self, my character 4, that is connected to all that is and is loving and nurturing. She's online. My little playful self, I can leap into her and go have some fun. My little character 2, okay, I'm not done yelling at you and chewing on that bone, or I'm feeling sad and I need some love. Or my character 1 is going to go and fix something and do something and get stuff done. So really for me, it's helping people understand these other characters, and they recognize it. So even children recognize these 4 parts of themselves. It's really amazing.
Yeah, you're very thorough. It's very clear. I wanted to make it more simple, but I was like, no, she's pretty thorough about it. I don't want to oversimplify it, because then we don't give credit to what the purpose is. So rather than looking at, character 2 as the negative one, but it's really about survival, and we need our character 2s for survival, and we need to lean into the fear if our gut's telling us something that we override with character 1, because we don't have time to deal with it. So I appreciate the thoroughness of the explanation of each of them and how you take us through them in the world, and then you're naming yours. And until I come up with a better name, I'm going to borrow Abby and Helen, because they're good.
Yeah.
They're good.
You're playful. I want to know who your little playful self is, JJ. I would think JJ, because JJ is like a fun little nickname.
Yeah.
JJ.
My character 3. Yeah. Well, actually, so I was thinking about when you were like, it's physical, and I'm like, oh yeah. And in the moment, character 3, and I'm like, oh, this is why I dance. And I taught salsa, and I've been doing salsa forever. Of course, not recently. Although, I mean, my partner Doug and I, we could. In fact, every time we watch the movie Chef, we dance. I'm like, because that whole score is salsa music. And by the end of it, I'm like, we just stop and we dance what they're having their wedding at the end. So, dancing was that path. It was, to me, when people would hear, and I would even say in terms of creating balance in life, and balance has sort of always been my thing also. It's not about good or bad, it's about balance. And that's what it sounds like also with this book about the decision, the balance of the power for whatever your goal is, for whatever what you want. And sometimes it'll be more of one because it has to be, and other times it'll be more of another, but we can't spend too much time in one. Otherwise we become depleted, and we have compensation patterns that in the end don't serve us, and that we're not happy because there are prices to pay for being in one for too long.
Yeah.
Even the ones that we think are great, like you were saying, in terms of you get nothing done if you lived in character 4 all the time, right? Like, and
absolutely
you would probably
not functional.
And you'd probably be hurt if you did all the things physically that you want to do if you were a character 3, because you wouldn't pay attention. So again, I really love the well-roundedness of the benefits and all the aspects, to give credit where credit's due, and to not make one necessarily good or bad, but that they're all functional. So, so the salsa part of me, the dancing part of me, which I'll be in a restaurant, and if they're playing salsa music, I will get up and dance, and I will say, who can salsa? I walk up to people I don't know and I say, do you know how to salsa? And because someone lead me, because I can lead, or I'll say, does anyone know how to salsa? And I'll lead them because I can lead. Yeah. But it's just, it overtakes me, especially Mark Anthony. I can't be anywhere in here, Mark Anthony, and not dance. So that's probably part of my character 3. I would love to find the places where I am more character 3 besides dancing, but especially what I would tell people, like with salsa, especially, it's when women, and I love teaching like women how to do this, because I'll take them and I'll lead them and I'll make them close their eyes, because they're all such like, well, I'm going to know the steps. They use character 1 to learn how to dance. I'm like, nope, it's not how you learn how to dance. When you are being led, whether it be you're being led by a woman or led by a man, when you're being led, it means you have to follow, which means you have to give up control, and you have to relax, and you have to just feel it. You can't think about it, and you can't plan for it. So I think that my character 3 probably lives the happiest in that space, and that's definitely what activates it. And I miss that because I haven't been doing it very much. So, I mean, I do it. I have a good time, but it's not as physical. I mean, we have a hot tub, and Doug and I we're really playful, and we're really funny. And we are always making fun of each other in fun ways. We're always laughing, and we always take things not very serious. So we barely fight. We've grown together and worked out our stuff from our past marriages, and figured out, because I've done all this work. So I had to use it on somewhere to have it work. So, and plus I manifested him because I work real hard at it. I lived in the space of character 4 of knowing everything was going to work out, and that I was going to get what I wanted. And I did. Oh. So I kind of would call my character 3 something like a Salsera. I'd call her like Little Miss Salsera. Because she wants to dance, and she just wants to dance everywhere, and she wants to dance all the time. And she would literally, like, if I'm really tired, I would just dance. You put salsa music on, like, oh, I'm up. I'll stop whatever I'm doing, wherever I am. My birthday last year was in Venice. We went to Venice, and yes, the pandemic had just started, but we were in Venice, and in the pizza shop, they were playing salsa music. I'm like, oh, I'm up. I have a video that Doug took of me doing salsa by myself in the pizza shop. I'm salsa dancing. And then I had him lead me, I don't care. I'm in Italy.
Yeah.
They're all like, yay. I'm like, I love it. So that's my character 3. And if anybody who knows me, they know that's true. If there's salsa music on, I will dance no matter where we are. Grocery store, store, restaurant.
And I hope that your audience comes and watches how it overtook your whole soul. Your little body just started wiggling, and it's just like, oh yeah, and your voice got excited. That's the character 3. I love that. I'm the same way with disco. As soon as disco goes and my head starts going, I'm out of there. It's just boom. It's a different era, but I'm a disco girl, and I just can't stop my head. Once it goes, then the hips go, and then everything's going, and I'm just happy.
Well, I think music, let's talk about frequency for a second with this. Like, it helps to activate that part of ourselves, and it overrides some of our other chatter that we have. And because of the fluidity of music, it actually can affect the way that I did a live event a couple of months ago. And by the time this is published last year, and dancing is a huge part of it. I mean, we teach a dance to get everybody up and get them physical. We have a dance party on the second night. And there's little dances in between breaks, fun dance music. And it's to get everybody again, actively and to have a good time. And to, besides the chemicals in the brain that get stimulated, it's also just the connection to ourselves and to integrate. And I think even people that one of my clients, Maureen, she's been a client for a long time. She said, I danced this time. I mean, she's been to every live event that I've had and she's never danced. And so, and I'm like, looking at people, I'm like, come on, get up. They're like, no, I'm like, you have to like, look good, just move, just get up. This is a safe space to look stupid and just flail your arms around. So, so I think dancing and music helps, right? Helps that
absolutely.
third part of our brain.
Yeah, well, but really, Annie, I mean, as soon as you bring on the march, you bring on the march, and what do you got? You got character one. Character one comes in. It's just it's doing the march. And then you can also have some music that just takes you into a more flowy space of a character four that's just open. But the power of music, because it's a wavelength, and what's the brain? It's just a bunch of cells communicating with chemicals in wavelengths. And so each of actually, as you look at somebody sent me an email, and he had done some research on looking at which characters were using which neurotransmitters and which wavelengths, the alpha, the beta, the delta, the theta were influencing which of these four different characters. And it's just physics stuck in biology.
Absolutely. And it's quantum physics at that.
It's quantum. Yeah.
Yep. Well, can I guess? So would we say that would alpha be maybe, now let me go theta. Theta would be character four.
Yeah. Theta's pretty mellow.
Pretty character four.
Pretty character four. Yeah.
Right. And alpha would be more maybe character one.
Character one. Pretty much character one. And then and beta is just that. So that's going to be more either character two or character one, depending on if it's thinking or if it's emotion, the drilling of it. Yeah. But alpha is really these big, beautiful kind of waves of big picture. So character one as well. Theta's interesting because theta, you're kind of awake, you're kind of asleep. It's right before you go deep. And there's a real high level of action going on in theta. People are doing things in theta. So theta may actually overlap with three. Because, the primary difference between 3 and 4 is that character 4 is peaceful, blissful euphoria, but there's no action. It simply is awareness of the presence, and everything in the present moment is really perfect until you filter it through an emotion. And then I have, depending on circumstances, whether I want to say I love it or I hate it, it's good or it's bad. No, it just is what it is to character 4. And it's like, I'm alive. So why isn't that like the best thing ever until I'm gone? And then it was like, wow, that was such a thing, right? But character 3 is an impetus of energy toward. There's a moment of action. There's something like salsa. Something's gonna burst out in an action.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. I love it. Okay. So because I love to tell people to do binaural beats and different kind of brain waves. And so to activate, so looking at picking which ones for what purpose to help strengthen or to help awaken, help repattern, neuroplasticity and neural pathways for people so they can transition easier also. So so my character 3, we'll call her Miss Salsera. And then my character 4 would probably be Goddess of the World. I don't know, like
Goddess of the World.
Well,
she is, isn't she?
Yeah, when you made it a toad, so I was like that because your playfulness. I was like, yeah, no, toad is not going to work for me.
I made it queen toad,
queen toad, right?
Yeah. That was the balance,
right? Yeah. Which was funny, and I was like, queen. You went queen. I was like queen, and you went toad. I was like toad. Like, because I'm goofy and I'm funny. I'm like, okay, definitely that one is not me. Yeah. I mean, I'm goofy, I am goofy.
Well, I live on a boat in a different way. I live on a boat half a year. So that's my lily pad.
There you go.
So, toad. Right. Yeah.
I say goddess of the world because the joke is with like the last therapist that I worked with years ago, and then I told Terry Real this the other day, because I use astrology to explain this as a Pisces. Because my last therapist years ago was a Taurus, and I've worked with different coaches and have a coach now, but when I worked with her, it was very specifically to help heal some traumas or patterns using EMDR. Because at the time, I didn't realize that EFT was self-administered EMDR. So now I have EFT, but I used EMDR with her, and I was searching for somebody, and she was a Taurus. And I would hear her love. I interpreted her correctly, her love for me, but she'd say things like, I think sometimes you go too far outside of yourself. And of course, which was a perfect Taurus thing to say, right? And I'm like, I said, I appreciate that. I said, but we interpret things differently. I said, you as a Taurus want grounded, stable, steady, you go inwards. I said, the more inward I go, the less connected I feel. I said, as a Pisces who wants to look outside of myself, it expands me, which calms me, which is very different than the way that she did it. So that's why I say goddess of the world, because the minute it goes big and expansive, I melt into a calmness because now I'm the same as all that is.
Yeah. That's your 4. She's beautiful. Fantastic.
So, okay. So I want to, in order to jump to, if we had to not categorize one word, but I'm looking on page 175, connection to ourself, our 4 characters in the body. And I'm just going to, because I stopped at this, I was flipping through to see what else I wanted to ask you and to talk about. And there's plenty to talk about, don't worry, but I'm just saying this is a good thing for people to hear. Chapter one sees our body as a vehicle. Character 1 sees our body as a vehicle. Character 2 sees our body as a responsibility. Character 3 sees our body as a toy. And character 4 sees our body as a temple of the soul. I think that is really succinct also for someone who just quickly, is trying to figure out what different parts of their brain are without the really wonderful description and complete flushing of every point of view that you do with each one of these characters, which is, and I'll laugh. My character 1 was like, can you just please tell me just give me the overview, give me the cliff notes so I can move on, because I have other tools too. And then as I'm listening, I'm like, oh no, that's true. That's good. Yeah. In the world. Okay. I have a different perspective now. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I see why she's doing it this way. So I was having this whole conversation with myself and going, okay, this is good. Yep. You needed to hear this entire thing. You could not skip over this. There was no cliff notes to this. So just shut up and listen. And so
I think you're right. I think cliff notes are great, but if people truly want to embody the material and be able to know these 4 characters of themselves, the book is designed to have them truly look at this part of themselves, recognize this part of themselves, because really doesn't life boil down to how do I get out of my character 2 pain when I'm ready to? Because it's great to be a 1, to be functional and organized and get stuff done. And it's great to be a character 3 and have playful joy. And it's great to know how to step into that character 4. And a lot of people, the character 4 is this great mystery. I have to meditate for 20 years before I can find that blissful euphoria. Well, in the meantime, I get caught up in the languaging of, am I doing it right? Is it good enough? And, oh, I need to do that. Oh, I forgot to do that. Oh, there's this, there's that, and the other, and then my meditation time is done. And so I never really get to that character, that character 4. Or when I pray, what am I praying to? If I'm really stuck in the characters 1 and 2, I don't know how to attain that space of simple gratitude that I exist at all. And so one of the reasons I take you so deeply into each of these is so that you know how to get to your character 4, because character 4 seems like this great unconscious mystery. And it's like, no, this is a part of our brain. It is connected to all that is. We can step into that piece of who we are instantaneously, and we do it periodically throughout our lives. So recognizing when I am there, strengthening that part of me, then it's like, now I have access to all of me. And then it's like in any moment, then I do have the power to pick and choose who and how I want to be, because I know what my 4 choices are so well.
Yeah. And I think that one of the benefits of, like you just said, knowing what they are, recognizing where you are, knowing it exists, because people will think, like you said, oh, I have to go to Tibet. I have to go to be a monk.
Right.
I have to, like, that's the only way I'm going to
Right.
access this part of my brain, which isn't true, which helps people get over this excuse that they can't get there or that they don't know how to get there. Now, the how to, it's to me, the brain, when I first had, my last two events were called the Manifestation Bootcamp. And I don't know if I explained to you that I come from a personal training background. And so physiology was something that I learned. It took me a while. It had to be mechanical for me to see physiology. It had to be to see all the chemical and electrical passing off from action potential to muscle contraction. It took me a while until the Atom Company came up with a colored, user-friendly like depiction that gave things form and color and shape and size, and now became mechanical, and I could see it and I could make sense of it. When you have like your professor drawing things in black pencil and it didn't translate to my brain. So when I did the manifestation boot camp the first time, it was funny because I was trying to explain the idea of elevating our frequency and how we could learn to do that. And I even came up with a strengthening intuition class after this. But I started to make the muscle. And I started to explain that when you do the same exercises all the time, you're only stimulating a very small part of the muscle fibers in that muscle. And sometimes because of trauma or an injury, sometimes those muscle fibers get blocked and then we compensate. And there are just times where parts of our muscles aren't ever being used because we don't create a pathway for it. And so when I explained it in a muscle, I realized, oh, it's the same thing for the brain. I was like, oh, the brain's not that much more complicated than the muscle. We just don't have a pathway for it. So when people say, so that back to the client I worked with earlier this week, who's stuck in her character 2 in her job. And I asked her, does she do what I teach people as rampage of appreciation and exercise, which is like having gratitude, but I like appreciation better. It's a better frequency for me. So we do rampages, and I challenge people just to do a rampage of appreciation, which is anywhere from a 2 to 4 minute, consistent, constant rampage of things you appreciate. And the goal of it is to feel good. The goal of it is to activate the feelings. And so I asked her, does she do them? And she goes, oh, I do them to myself. I'm like, no, not acceptable. All right, go. And so she went, and then I turned around and then I did one, and she goes, wow, you're really good at that. I said, because I've strengthened it.
Right.
And that's all it takes. That's the only difference, is just like exercise. When you go to the gym and you're not so strong, and then you do the exercise and you do it over and over again, you get stronger. You strengthen the brain, you strengthen that part of you. You do it over and over. You're not going to be good at first, but you're going to get better at it the more you do it. Right.
Right.
I mean, is it kind of that simple?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's circuitry. The more you run a circuit, the stronger the circuit begins to get. And then eventually it'll run on automatic and become a new habitual emotion or a new habitual thinking. That's how we create habits in our brain. You're absolutely right.
What is your percentage? I was listening to when you were saying that you decided that the only way you wanted to come back is if you could live in your character 4 as much as possible, and you only involve the other ones just to function or get by. So what is your percentages of choice of, like, so, we're character 1 right now because you're being linear and thinking and talking, and there's parts of us that are doing character 3 and character 4, not as much 4, but more 3, with the undertone of that, we're in the same frequency of belief, same frequency of appreciation and love and acknowledgement and consciousness of all that is. But how much, I'd love to hear what give us a before and after. Where were you before? And then where are you now?
So I would say before, I was driven to my character 1 was driven by my character 2 pain to be a brain scientist at Harvard. And then I had a completely different right brain, because I was much more right brain growing up. I was probably 80%, 85%, 90% right brain growing up. And then I fell in love with anatomy, and I became an anatomist, and I climbed the Harvard ladder. So I was this, and I became more left. And then I had the stroke, and that got wiped out. And then I went back to being right brain, and I was happy again because I had a really strong right brain before I developed the left brain. And then I had to redevelop the left brain. So now I'm much more right brained, even though, and here's the beauty. I'm over 60 now, so I have the ability to say no. And it's very different now because it's like you go do that, and these are the things I will do. I'm good at this. I will do this. I enjoy this. But those things, no. And I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. I mean, there are certain things I will never be good at. Like Nova came and said, "Okay, we are considering you as a host for a show," and I thought, well, that's interesting. And so they made me read a prompt, and I'm like, I mean, it was terrible. And it was like, I will never say yes to anybody who ever wants me to do anything like that because I'm horrible. Why would I stress myself at this point in my life? So I just pretty much go with the flow. There are certain things that unfold and I end up in the flow. And now that the book is out, I'm really focused. My friends say, Jill, you're a mile deep and an inch wide. I'm all about this message in every avenue that I absolutely possibly can do it. So right now I'm working with a research team at DePaul University, and we're going to get whole brain living in a school system so that we can show that it's evidence-based, because our schools are desperate for getting everybody out of the two. The teachers are quitting. Whole school systems, some of them cannot be open 5 days a week because they don't have enough teachers or substitute teachers. And they've dropped all their standards for who can be a teacher because they need an adult warm body at the front of the room. So we are in a crisis in our school systems. And it's like, can whole brain living help? And I truly believe it can, and I truly believe it will. But yeah, I'm this wide, inch wide and a mile deep.
Is this crisis because of the pandemic?
Yeah. Well, they were already, we already had a whole lot of hostility and anxiety. I have to say that as long as we've been teaching to the standardized tests, which is a purely left brain fact phenomenon, we are not training kids to think. We are not giving whole brain living. We are teaching them how to memorize and how to regurgitate, and there's never enough time. And then the leadership is saying, well, we have to have decent scores and that's how we get our title funds. And so there's just this incredible left brain pull. So we're having a collapse because we're all left brained. We're not looking at how do we actually support people who are in pain, who are scared, who don't learn details really well. And so this has been a buildup since the Reagan era, when it really began that we were going to begin with this kind of standardized testing. So we were already in, it wasn't working. And then you stick an emotional pandemic on top of it. And the teachers are going, I got half the kids in class. I got half the kids on Zoom. I'm working twice as hard. I'm exhausted. The parents are angry because the kids are at home. So they focus on me. So the teachers are, and then my principal is saying, you got to do this and that and that. And the grades got to be like this. And their teachers are going, my kids are in emotional distress. And so in October of 2021, the American Academy of Pediatricians, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Physicians, and one other group all got together and declared a emotional emergency for our elementary kids. A nationwide emotional emergency. And the teachers and the school systems they're in a major crisis. So yeah, that's what's going on in the real world. And it's like, how do we help people get out of their twos so that they can actually become functional again? And how do we learn to nurture someone else's two so that it doesn't just, destroy a classroom? It's amazing.
That's a lot. And and I'm trying to decide and decipher what part of that I want to speak to, because I was recently at a meeting here locally, people who are pretty much against all mandates and making their own school systems and doing homeschooling and things, which is what I would do also. And I kind of thought, I'd volunteer to teach. And then I thought, well, what would I teach? And emotional intelligence came up in my mind. And but I'm like, okay, do you have a curriculum? Can I teach them this?
Yes, you absolutely can.
But
That's what this research project at DePaul is doing. We're creating a curriculum to teach not the kids, but the leadership, the principals, the teachers, the parents, the staff. We even want the bus drivers. They're the first person a kid sees and the last person a kid sees at the end of the day. So if we can drop whole brain living into to create a new community, then the kids will automatically get it. And we have to be very careful because, we have this program called SEL, social emotional learning, that has been pretty much in our school systems for the last 5 or 6 years. And now it's under a political attack. And so we don't want to do that. We just want to help. At this point, we just want to help stabilize people.
People need to be stabilized. It's one of the reasons why we're having what we're having right now is because of a lot of repressed and character twos taking over, because they didn't have an outlet. Now they have an outlet, and now their momentum has been completely increased, and they're living this momentum of their character two's fear of the future and fear of the past and pain of the past, and it's being projected from things that have nothing to do with what's actually happening. And so we're living in this state. And I think we're at that crux of emotional intelligence that, when we talked about it before, it's like, oh, that's nice, but that doesn't pay the bills. But oh yes, it does. Right. Because it's actually what we need now, and we need because it's what everyone's looking for. Right. The reason why there's so much dysfunction and discord is because people aren't paying attention to the part of themselves that is the reality, right? Like, so we're talking about the reality of the 3 and the 4 characters versus the reality of the 2, which isn't a reality. It's just it's a vision or a fear of something from the past or a memory. So that's amazing work. And so is there a place I can send people who are wanting to either help you push this through or want to be a part of this, or if there are teachers that listen to my show, where can I send them?
Dr. Jill at drjilltaylor.com. Come straight to me, because right now we're the team. We've already put in the proposal. We already know we're going to be funded. We've already started the teaching. And now it's just a matter of how do we really develop it and get it downloaded into different systems. So yeah, if anyone's interested in helping with this, please, Dr. Jill at drjilltaylor.com, and I'll send you to the right person who knows the right answers.
Is there a workbook that you have, or a quiz, or something that comes that we can get with this?
We're just at the beginning of all of it, and we will get there.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Because that will be extremely helpful to have people go through the workbook part. I mean, you ask very good questions.
Yes.
And it's funny because in my mind, I think you were asking like, well, who doesn't like your character 4? I said, I don't care who doesn't like my character 4. Or who doesn't like your character 3? I don't care who doesn't like my character 3. Obviously, by the way, I intro my show now, just to be very clear. I'm not here to people please. I'm here to educate. And if I don't jive, I'm totally cool with that. Goodbye. I, by the way, pay for this show. It is free content for you, and you're welcome. So, and I do it because it's an extension of what I am learning and what I am sharing and the work that I'm doing and in helping people. And it's another tool in the toolbox that could make the difference for somebody. It could be the one thing that they've been missing that clicks in a new way. They go, oh my God, that changed everything for me.
Right.
And I think for a lot of people, it will. And if it hasn't already. So everyone, please get Whole Brain Living, again, book. Or I think audio, because again, if you're listening on the podcast, you like to listen. So get the audiobook, because you'll hear Dr. Jill again be reading her book to you. But I don't want to be done with you yet. So what do you want to tell people now? I don't want you to go yet. So what do you want to tell people? Anything else about, because we looked at the character.
I think it's time for you to turn on the salsa and we start dancing. I think we're at that stage, don't you?
I think the intro to my last one, the intro that you people on YouTube don't get, because I recorded on audio before I published the show. But what I think I said to my audience was, okay, so I'm kind of like high octane, just so that you know, it's a very high energy. We're both very high energy. So you might want to turn it down a little bit versus turn it up. So I'm gonna have to say the same thing for this show, which is fine.
Yeah.
which is fine, which is cool, which is fun. So, well, okay. So then I don't have to ask you what's next. So what's
Yeah.
next is
Yeah.
that you're creating this curriculum, you're creating your workbook.
Right. Because I have a colleague who is a chief of a fire department, and, suicide is very high in police and fire departments because these are the first responders. So I'll be working with fire departments. I'll be working with police departments. I'll be working with school systems. I'm working with groups who need it. And it's interesting because people come to me and say, somebody was looking for a motivational speaker for a school system because of the last shooting, that school shooting that happened. And it's like, oh my gosh, to be able to help these people, really help these people manage all of it, just life right now. So, if people have, and one of the other things, JJ, not-for-profit organizations are coming to me and saying, we have 30,000 yoga mats in prisons across the US, and we want to get whole brain living into the prisons. And I say, how do I serve you? How do I help you? So whole brain living will be going into the prisons. It'll be going into yoga, into AA rehabilitation. It's going into camps for children with cancer. I mean, if you've got a group, contact me, please, because it's a beautiful program. We're just working out all the details and how to do it. But whole brain living, the anatomy of choice, and these 4 characters, it gives us our choice. It gives us the power to choose who and how we want to be in any moment. And oh my gosh, how do we train ourselves to self-soothe our own pain? And we can't do that if we don't know what our options are. So I think the material is beautiful. It's anatomically based. And we're just at a point in our society now where everybody can benefit from this information.
Absolutely. And you and I will talk offline because I'm like chomping at the bit here to be, well, yeah, I want to be involved, and I want to use your work in the work I'm doing. I want to help with your work. I want to help with that processing. It's how I started working with Dr. Nasha Winters, because she came on talking about the metabolic approach to cancer and having an emotion being a part of why someone heals or doesn't heal from cancer. And I went down the whole path of emotion. And by the end of it, I was like, hello, this is what I do. Like, helping people deal with their emotions is like the only freaking thing I talk about at nauseum. And so
this wide and a mile deep. That's what I'm hearing.
Right. And so this is another tool to bring into that work. And then I also feel like there's other complementary things, because we're on the same team doing the same thing, trying to get people to understand and to have a different perspective, to have choice that they don't even know they have, because the subject of emotion, the subject of even feeling the feelings of character too. Most people, a lot of the clients that I have right now will joke, because one came to the event and she came and she's a 3-time breast cancer survivor. And she came and she crossed her arms and she furrowed her brow, and she looked at me and she's basically, without saying the words, said to me, "You're not breaking me." And I was like, whoa, okay. You flew all the way across the country to come to my event to sit here and tell me I wasn't going to break you. Okay, cool. That's fine. And then by the end, she broke open, and now she's like, and now she feels free. And she goes, I always hear what you say. It's not going to kill you. I'm like, correct. It's going to save you, but you have to let it out. And most people are so afraid of their emotion, thinking that they're going to die if they cry or die if, and so it's being able to normalize that, and to have that be acceptable, and to not continue just celebrating character ones in the world, but by looking at we're all, because here's an Abraham quote that I don't know that I said last time, but the only reason we want what we want is because we think we're going to feel better when we have it. And that is the entire life cycle, period, the end. Anything character 1 is trying to get to, it's because they want what character 4 is. That is it. Every single character is just looking for the 4. You're just looking to feel good. I don't give a shit what it is. That is what you're doing. So, and that's what I teach, is the reality. You can just
hired.
You can skip to the end. All right.
But you're right. You're absolutely right. And the character one, too. It's just all the stress circuitry. So what does stress do? Distress, disease. I mean, it's just like, boom, run that cycle. Or, phew, let's step out of that into our peace of heart and peace of mind. Come into the present moment and say, you know, I'm okay. Even if I don't get that list done, I'm good with it.
Yep. This is an epidemic and pandemic, the way that we have led this and taken this. So if you haven't been thoroughly convinced by this point, I don't know, there's hope for you. I'm just kidding. But get Whole Brain Living, the book and the audio, dig into it. And of course, she'll probably be back. And if not, I'm sure I'll be telling you more about stuff that we're doing and things you can get. And then when the workbook comes out, I'll let everybody know, because I'll be the first to get it. Because then that gives people like something tangible they can do. The ones that aren't real good character ones need a little bit more structure for the character one part. So
yeah. Perfect.
So, Dr. Jill, thank you again for coming back so quickly and for gracing us with your character 3 and 4 and 1.
Thank you very much.